Another MVP caliber quarterback sees this season come to an end. Bay Area Bedlam, and do you know the Mayo Man? All that and more, because it's time for Sunday Night Blitz. All right, it's time for Sunday Night Blitz. Frank Schwab, Jason Fitz hanging out with you as we do every single Sunday, doing our immediate reaction. I should stress to everybody, Frank, that we do this right as the games come to a close. So we are living the same raw emotions that everybody else is living. And before we get to any of the games, let's make sure we capture the most important raw emotion, which is just a simple fact. Every team that has a throwback jersey should go back to the throwbacks and throw away whatever they wear right now. Like the Oilers-Titans thing today, chef's kiss, it looked delightful.
You know, the one weird thing about that, though, is the Nashville people have no connection to that throwback, and the Houston people aren't like, hey, great, awesome, this team that left us is wearing our throwbacks that we love. So it's the one throwback that's not really for the team involved or the fans of it. It's for us. It's for everybody else who's not really a Titans or Oilers fan. But yes, I have very few good theories in life, but this is one of them, Fitz. Every team looked better in 1994 than they do now. Unless it's like the Packers or the Bears who've been wearing the same thing forever. Try to find me a team that did not look better in 1994. That was the apex of uniforms for me. And so see the Seahawks look so good. Even the Dolphins wore their throwback-ish. I mean, they look pretty much the same, but Dolphins were back in them. The Kelly Green is back. Like the creamsicles were back a few weeks ago. It just is beautiful, and I love it.
Yeah, you're right about the Titans portion with the Oilers, though. Blatant disrespect that they picked a few games this year to wear the Oilers throwbacks, and one of those games is also going to be against Houston, which is such a just kick in the no-no places.
Right? Like it's like, hey, Houston, hey, here's those jerseys. Remember that team you used to love? Yeah, we got them.
Do you ever want to piss off a whole area of the country? Whenever the Carolina Hurricanes in the NHL wear their throwback Hartford Whaler unis, like the sweaters, if you fly into Hartford, when you get off of the Hartford airport, the stores there still sell Hartford Whaler stuff. And the Whalers haven't been there since, the mid-90s? They still sell that stuff with pride. Every time Carolina puts those things on as their throwback or their alt, oh my God, the entire New England area just loses their damn minds over this. So, I do think it's appropriate for Houston fans to not feel the love of remembering that when the Oilers became the Titans, the city insisted on a name change. So yeah, I'm with you on that one. But still,
by the way, once in a while, the Colorado Avalanche wear the old Quebec Nordique stuff. And it's like 8 billion times better than their uniforms now. Like, just go to the Nordique stuff. Who cares? Like Quebec, nobody's even paying attention up there. Let's just bring the Avalanche stuff back to the Quebec Nordiques. We're gonna change everybody's uniform by the end of this hour, Fitz. I can feel it. We're gonna make change happen tonight.
The hot take that always gets me in trouble is, as a fan of a team with the Raiders that never does these jerseys, I really do. I just wish once they'd give me I know most of the fans that complain about it, but every time they're like, here's an alt jersey, a throwback jersey, a different jersey, they all look basically 98% the same. So I just want something that's, a little different once. All right, let's get to the actual action from Sunday. And a lot of it is significant, not just for this week, but for the entire rest of the season. I walked in today saying, I don't know, kind of a lame card. Let's see what we're talking about tonight. And the biggest story is about an MVP caliber quarterback that is not going to see the rest of the season. Kirk Cousins goes down with what we believe is an Achilles injury. Rarely wrong about these things in this situation. The Vikings get a 24-10 win over the Packers. But Frank, I just kept looking at this thing saying this gets really weird now, because a few days ago it was, will the Vikings be buyers or sellers depending on where things are going to go? Now they're going to have to make that decision without having their MVP caliber quarterback playing the best football of his career.
You do use MVP a little bit loosely with old Kirk. I like Kirk. I don't think he's going to sniff MVP discussions.
He was putting up
numbers. That's the thing. I like Kirk, and this is a huge blow for the Vikings. It really is, because they're getting this momentum. With that 49ers upset last Monday night, all of a sudden it was like, oh my goodness, the Vikings going to the playoffs. I thought that. I mean, you look at their upcoming, I think it was 6-game schedule, and it was like, they're probably going to go 5-1 in these games, but now that's all out the window. I almost feel like they have to be on the phone with Tennessee, right? And we're going to get to Tennessee, what happened with their quarterback situation today. We don't know when Ryan Tannehill's coming back, but he's kind of the one guy that you can go get, that you can plug in your lineup when he's healthy and feel kind of good about it. But what's Tennessee asking for? Is Tennessee willing to move Ryan Tannehill right now just because Will Levis balled out today? There's a bunch of moving parts here, and it's hard. It's hard for a quarterback to just join a team midseason. You're kind of just, when your quarterback goes down, you're kind of just screwed, Fitz, right? Like,
but
what are you
you're
going to do?
also like, you're taking the presumption that they need to be aggressive in acquisition. A few days ago, we were sitting here talking about, will Danielle Hunter be dealt, right? So do they do the opposite now? Like, are they taking phone calls because everybody's going to call them and be like, look, there's no nice way to say this, Minnesota. You are effed. Like, everything's just going to go downhill now. So knowing that, do you go out and get the capital you can get and accelerate your rebuild? Like, I don't know what I would do if I was sitting in their situation. I feel like it's not fair to the rest of the roster to blow it up, but there is nobody on the street that's going to make Minnesota a Super Bowl caliber team this year. I'm not even sure they were with Kirk Cousins playing the best ball of his career. So I almost feel like you have to give up on the season.
You're not wrong. It's hard for an NFL team to have some momentum and they feel good. And they feel like those first 5 weeks of the season, I believe they were 1-4. Those first 5 weeks were fluky. They were losing every single close game and they were in all those games. It's hard now when you have a winning streak going to be like, hey, like you said, locker room. Hey guys, sorry, we're giving up on you. Like, that's not going to go over well. Although I think in a very private, honest moment, the Minnesota Vikings would agree with you and say, we're screwed. What are we going to do? Like, even if my Ryan Tannehill fantasy there, they go get Ryan Tannehill. That doesn't make him a Super Bowl team. Maybe some playoff team, and that's nice. But do you give up draft picks to go lose in a wild card round? I don't know. It is a very, very tough situation. I absolutely agree with you.
Yeah, I would say that the loser of this matchup is also in a tough situation because here we are sitting in a game. 24-10 is the final score for the Vikings. It should be noted that Jaron Hall comes in, turns the ball over almost immediately deep in Minnesota territory. Green Bay has a chance to do something with it, and this is a theme. Man, no offense. Like, they got nothing. They look terrible. The Packers right now got to be looking around saying, y'all, like, we know who we have as quarterback. And we know who we have as quarterback. He ain't it. Like, no. It's time. You can put a stick and fork in that thing. It's done.
Man, well, we were sitting there week one out in Vegas. We need to go back to Vegas, by the way, Fitz. I think
we should.
That's where I'm getting with this. But we watched Jordan Love, and I felt good all off season. Jordan Love's going to be the guy. The Packers are going to be good. They got good talent around him. Week one, I felt good, man. I was like, yep, I was right. Pat myself on the back over that one. And here we are. It's not even Halloween. And I'm like, I could not have been more wrong about a player than I was about Jordan Love. He might be the worst quarterback in the NFL, starting wise. I mean, unless you're counting like some of the injury replacements and stuff. But would you rather have Mac Jones right now? I probably would. Would you rather have Desmond Ridder right now? Yeah, probably. Like, that's how bad Jordan Love is playing. They've gone 5 straight games without a first half touchdown. That is the longest streak for them that way since 1988, 4 years before Brett Favre got there. Look, Packers fans, I'm from Wisconsin. I know a lot of Packers fans. Packers fans have been so spoiled over the last 3 decades with this quarterback run, and it is over. OVER, done. It is not. He ain't the guy. And you look back at what I wrote about winners and losers today up on yahoo.com was that pick that they made, that they probably were just trying to replicate. Hey, we did this with Aaron Rodgers back in the day. We got a guy in the first round and he took over for Brett and it worked out. That pick they made of Jordan Love was an absolute positive disaster because you waited 3 years with him on the bench for this. When you could have got an impact player, you were the number 1 seed in the NFC 2 straight years, couldn't get over the hump. Well, maybe T. Higgins could have helped you get over the hump, right? Like, I mean, anybody other than Jordan Love sitting on the bench. And that's what's most troubling about Jordan Love. Yes, it's his first year starting, but he is not a rookie. He ain't a rookie. He should have been ready to go. This is year 4, and he looks awful. That Packers team looks awful. They're dead in the water, and they're starting over a quarterback for the first time since I think I was a freshman in high school back in 1991 there when they traded for Brett Favre.
But I like the way you said that, and I saw some of the winners and losers piece today, and it really strikes me that if we are going to buy the argument that some quarterbacks need to be developed slowly off the field, basically, then what we have to buy as part of that is that we must have an accelerated expectation when they hit the field. Yep. So, I don't think it's wrong to say, okay, Jordan Love, you spent we're waiting. Now's your chance. You had a couple of years to marinate. If you put everything in the slow cooker, once it's out of the slow cooker, you can't really resauce it then. You just got what you got, right? And so Jordan Love at this point is you put it in the slow cooker, you took it out, and you're like, honey, the pot roast is not good. So ain't nothing we can do about it now. You just got to eat it and get done with it. So
and then you got some got some pizza rolls, you're gonna come out of the microwave. We're gonna go on. Are we hungry or something? Did you have dinner or something tonight? But yeah, you're right. Like it's a disaster quarterback for the Packers, and I'll just take the L right now. I was wrong. Packers are terrible. Jordan Love's not the answer. I mean, maybe he could get there by in the second half of the year. We've seen weirder things happen, but nothing about that team looks good.
But let's keep this team going because Minnesota right now may have Jaron Hall, their 6th-round rookie, starting at quarterback. Jordan Love isn't any good. You get to the next game on the slate that I think was pretty stunning for most of us to watch. We thought it would be ugly, but the Jets taking on the Giants showed us a little bit of the worst. Like, I am so tired of hearing about the personal growth of Zach Wilson after every single Jets game. Like, this was a 13-10 awful football game where neither offense looked even competent. And afterwards on Twitter, everybody's putting up his quotes about a botched snap. And he's like, yeah, no, that's on me. We need more practice time. Like, such personal growth. You put up 13 points. Like, I started the Giants on my fantasy team. Thank God I won my matchup today because the Jets offense was so putrid. But yeah, let's talk about the personal growth. On the other side of this, you got a Giants team that loses Tyrod Taylor, and all of a sudden we're reminded that I'm not even like there aren't 32 starting quarterbacks in the NFL, but there sure as hell aren't 32 backup quarterbacks that are worth getting into games. Like, it is ugly to watch at this point.
Oh my God, that game was, I think I'll get the stat a little bit wrong here because I'm going off the top of my head, but I think it was 22 punts, and that was the most since like 2002 or something like that in a game. It was awful football game. But what stuck out to me here is, well, first of all, it was, oh my goodness, the Jets are going to lose to a guy named Tommy DeVito, who might just be made up. Like, I don't even know if that name's real. Like, I was like, I had to look up where he went to college. I'm like, Illinois. I'm a Big Ten guy, and I don't even remember this guy. But they were going to lose to him. The New York Giants had 7 passing yards today. 7. In 2023, in the National Football League, Tyrod Taylor, I believe, had 8 passing yards, and Tommy DeVito had -1. Like, what? What do we do? And the Jets were going to lose to this team. I'll be honest, like, I sit there, I watch all the games, right? And when a game's over, I just lock in on other games because we're getting down to the end, right? The witching hour, right? Or whatever you want to call it from Red Zone. And I didn't know the Jets even got the ball back. Zach Wilson took a terrible sack on 4th and 10. I'm like, okay, that game's over. I don't need to pay attention to it anymore. And I turned back to it. I'm writing winners and losers. I turned back to it. All of a sudden, the Jets are spiking the ball. 1 second left. Like, what on earth happened? I went, figured it all out and figured out that Brian Daboll made just a really bad choice. Look, when you have the ball at your opponent's, I believe, 28-yard line with 1:26 to go, and your opponent doesn't even have all 3 of its timeouts left, and you lose that football game, it is an absolute disaster. They get to 4th and 1, and they're up 3. You kick a field goal, you're only up 6. And Brian Daboll said, well, yeah, I wanted to go up 6, and they had to score a touchdown in the last 25 seconds. Okay, I guess I get that. But they missed the field goal. Jets hit two straight 29-yard passes, and now it's just another mark against Brian Daboll, who I've made this comparison before. He's on the Matt Nagy path right now of, I won Coach of the Year, and I'm having a disastrous second season, and maybe he can't get out of this skid. They're a bad team, and we were talking about before we started the show, it's not just that they're losing games, because that happens. Look, you just go through bad seasons. This is a team that looks unprepared. They look uncompetitive. They're a bad football team, and they gave away this win today that somehow they're going to win this game. And Brian Daboll's like, nah, you guys have it after all. We don't need it.
Yeah, I think it's important to note, by the way, DeVito, I only know because every time I read his college highlights before, I would always say, Tommy, don't call me Danny DeVito. I don't know, like, just the Always Sunny in Philadelphia fan in me. Like, that's the only. So but honestly, I didn't even realize he was on the Giants roster. When they said he was playing, I was like, oh, there you go. Like, but that's not where you want to be in this situation. But let's not get it twisted. It wasn't going well with Tyrod either, right? And there are games where you can turn around and say, okay, great defense. I'm all in on great defense. This was not that. The number of times we saw drops or we saw passes that were a little late, a little behind. They tried to run the football. There's nothing there. Like, you watch these two teams play, and it was like their feet were stuck in the mud the whole time. I felt like I was watching bad college football. And that's a statement. I realize everybody now is making a big deal. Well, the Jets look at their record and they're going to keep treading water, and that means Aaron Rodgers is going to come back. Like, we need to start remembering, as I say every week, your record doesn't always mean you are good or bad. I don't care what their record is. The Jets are a bad football team. And then the fact is, the Giants were even worse. Like, how do you let injuries aside? How do you let that result happen? And it just, to your point, the last minute and 28, you knew that kick wasn't going in. A second miss of the game. Yeah, you knew the kick wasn't going in, and you're looking at Daboll and saying, like, what are we doing here? Like, and then to go into the shell of a defense they went into to allow that to happen. Like, fine, give the Jets their flowers for the win and a 13-10 win, but that was one of the ugliest damn 13-10 football games I've ever watched, and I watched bad college football.
It was like watching both teams have Iowa's offense. Shout out to Andy Behrens. It was ugly. It was awful. Real quick, though, where are you at on Daboll? Is in 3 years from now, is he still the coach of the Giants? Do Giants fans love him? Is he the next Ben McAdoo? Like, where are you at with Daboll?
No, I'm one and done.
I'm kind of out.
I'm one and done for a couple of reasons. Like, you can figure out if you've got the right offensive head coach quickly. And this is the stat I keep saying, and I'll say it all season long for new viewers. But if you remember a couple of weeks ago, Sunday Night Football, they told us the 3 teams in the NFL that use the most pre-snap motion. I keep bringing this stat up because it speaks to offensive creativity, right? So the 3 teams that use the most motion, Miami, San Francisco, and Kansas City. What do you know? Those are the 3 offenses that, at least at that point, were all shining at the highest level. Like, you tell me what we've seen that's creative from Daboll in any sense here. So if the 2 things that you're known as for a head coach offensively is, 1, you were able to figure out how to get Josh Allen to mitigate his mistakes and figure out how to really mold that quarterback and make him great. Okay, well, you ain't molding any of these guys. Even when Daniel Jones was playing, he didn't look like he was lights out this year. Nothing feels like it's suddenly locked in, and it's not creative. So if you're not locked in, you're not precise, you're not creative, what in the hell are you as an offensive caller? So, like, I don't think this team has any offensive identity. So then I got to look straight at the offensive mastermind and say, hey, what in the hell are we doing around here? I have no faith in this point at the Giants with Daboll.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you there. And who knows? I mean, they were pretty good. I mean, they were a playoff team. They won a playoff game. I get that. They were out in front of their skis a little bit, but it was still a solid growth year for Daniel Jones, for everybody. But man, it's been, I mean, just some of their games are so uncompetitive. Yeah, I think if I had to pick right now, is Brian Daboll the Giants head coach in 3 years? I'd probably say no.
Yeah, and at some point we got to take, if we're going to take the best of what happened last year, let's combine it with the worst of this year. And now all of a sudden we're judging on a bell curve. Doesn't look good. It also maybe doesn't look good for the very 49ers I was just mentioning. 3 straight losses now. They lose 31-17 to Cincinnati in a game where, frankly, Brock Purdy didn't look great. And look, I've been over here flying the Brock Purdy flag saying, hey, he's going to be just fine. Everything's going to be just fine. Well, we got a real reminder in this game to oversimplify football. We got a real reminder that when you have that guy, because Cincinnati, I don't know how Burrow got healthy during the season, but Burrow looks like the Burrow we're used to. The timing is back. Everything's beautiful. Cincinnati looks absolutely dominant. And on the other side, you've got Christian McCaffrey, who is still one of the best. You've got Brandon Ayuk, who is still one of the best at what he's doing. I think it's pretty inexcusable that they haven't been able to get more out of Brock Purdy through the process of some of the injuries over the last few weeks. San Francisco looks like a shell of themselves in this losing streak.
Man, I mean, it just turned on a dime for them, and I hate when I give up good takes too quickly, right? Like, I already took my L on Jordan Love, but what I might have been right about was, if you go back all summer, I was basically saying, we sure about the 49ers? We sure Brock Purdy's that dude? And then the first 5 weeks, I'm like, I'm wrong, of course. Brock Purdy looks like a superstar. The 49ers look unbeatable. That's your Super Bowl champions. And then the last 3 weeks, they've looked just like any other team. I mean, they lose to PJ Walker, but then back-to-back weeks, they just get absolutely cooked by Kirk Cousins and Joe Burrow. Good quarterbacks, but these dudes are just tearing apart their defense. It's not just Brock Purdy. If it was just, hey, the Brock Purdy's playing bad, it's one guy right now, we can figure this. Okay, but your defense looks terrible too. Yes, Brock Purdy's throwing a lot of interceptions. You do wonder, should he have played today? Did he come back too quickly from the concussion? I mean, I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I don't know. Obviously, he was cleared, but he just looked not like himself. Like he was, those turnovers in the second half were just awful. And you do have to wonder now, where are the 49ers going? They're not first place anymore. Seattle Seahawks, so I picked to win the NFC West, are in first place right now. I did not expect that to happen this year when the 49ers are 5-0. What do we make of the 49ers now, Fitz? Where are you at with them? Is this just a bad 3-game losing streak and they're going to be great by the end of the year? Or is this who the 49ers actually are?
I think I have to take some of the blame, my friend. Like, I have to come over there and take the backpack of shame that you're wearing right now. Like, if you were carrying Yoda around like Empire of the Strikes Back, I would take Yoda from you and be like, no, man, this is my burden to carry, because I'm the one that came in and was like, San Francisco, San Francisco, San Francisco. And you're right. I think the defense deserves to absolutely be shredded for this performance. They gave up 400 yards. They only forced one turnover in that process. But what I think is really interesting is they gave up 29 first downs. Like, that's a lot of first downs, you know? And I start thinking about what that means in this game and the way you're being beat. Like, Joe Mixon was efficient at the same time that Joe Burrow was absolutely surgical. This is the line: 28 of 32, 283 for 3 touchdowns. And it was so precise. And it felt like San Francisco was a step slow to everything that they needed to do. I mean, look, scoring 17 points isn't enough offensively, and I'm not going to take anything away from that. But you're right, that defense still gave up 31. So I think right now, if we were sitting here having a who's legit in the NFC conversation, Philadelphia may not always look good, but they find a way. Like, they're finding a way through this 3-game losing streak. San Francisco is just finding a way to plant more seeds of doubt every single week on whether or not they're actually going to be able to take the next step.
A great defense does not allow 28 to 32, like, for 283 yards. Like, I mean, Joe Burrow just killed them today. It was like, what happened to this 49ers defense? And again, that was a week after Kirk Cousins without Justin Jefferson torched them. I don't know. I sit here and I don't know what to make of the 49ers. I don't know if they're great and they're just in a losing streak. I don't know if they're just mediocre because maybe their quarterback is turning into a pumpkin right now. I just have no idea. It's one of the weirder stories in the NFL, because we sat here 3 weeks ago when they absolutely demolished the Cowboys, and they looked like, we're not just talking about the best team football this year. We're talking about, like, this might be the best team football in 20 years. Like, that's how good they looked after 5 games. And how do you explain a U-turn like that? It's not just because Deebo Samuel's hurt. Like, that, Deebo's a great player, but that ain't it. There's just something has gone absolutely off the rails for the 49ers these past 3 weeks.
I think this is going to end up also becoming one of the biggest tests that Kyle Shanahan's ever faced as a head coach, because to your point, there were massive expectations for this team, not just from us, but from everybody. And they met those expectations in the beginning of the season. So now, if suddenly this thing's gotten off the rails, this is specifically, again, where I put a lot of onus on coaching, right? Like, the coaches got to figure out what's wrong inside these halls. What do I need to do to trigger this team the right way? And if Shanahan doesn't have the answer to that, this could be the first time that we actually start asking some Shanahan questions, because nobody questions his brilliance. But let's be real here. The results have not been what San Francisco needs for as good as this chapter has been for them. So if they're going to suddenly fall short, I think it's fair for us to suddenly have questions that we ask Kyle Shanahan.
One big question that he's going to have to wrestle with, let's say Brock Purdy has like 2 more games like this. After he threw the bad interceptions at the end of the Monday night game, throws the bad interceptions today. Let's say, again, two more bad games like this. They lose 2 more or lose 1 or 2. Do you actually bench him? Do you go to Darnold? Like, this is something we didn't expect a quarterback controversy in San Francisco 3 weeks ago. Let's put it that way. But if he keeps playing like this, Kyle Shanahan's going to have to look in the mirror and say, do I go to Sam Darnold? Like this, I can't believe, honestly, we are having this conversation about the 49ers. This is how quickly stuff could change in the NFL, and it is changing on a dime for the 49ers.
Think about this, though. To your point, the next game for the 49ers is at Jacksonville. They have a bye, so let's see if they get it right. They come out of the bye at Jacksonville against a Bucs team that's better than anyone expected. Then the Seahawks, the Eagles, the Seahawks. Like, if they don't play better than they've played over the last 3 games, there's 4 losses there. Like, if they can't get this thing right, this thing falls off the rails quickly. And then all of a sudden, you're right. Like, we could be having a totally different Brock Purdy conversation in a month simply because of the schedule that's in front of them.
Yeah. Those Seahawks games are going to be interesting because they dominated the Seahawks last year. I mean, the Seahawks didn't even deserve to be on the same field as them. But now Seahawks are in first place. And boy, those are going to be really, really interesting games.
Yeah, we'll get into the Seahawks in a little bit and what they did today, but I want to say it one more time. The 5-2 Seattle Seahawks are the first place team in the NFC West right now, not the San Francisco 49ers. Now, speaking of shocking results today, and this one I think was probably the most surprising upset of the day, the same Denver team that got their butts just mollywopped a few weeks ago by Miami, that same Denver Broncos team, yeah, they absolutely shut down the Chiefs today. They win 21-9. And I don't know, Frank, you tell me where you are on this. Because like I feel like every time I watch a bad game for Patrick Mahomes, and today felt like a bad game. Every time I watch a bad game, it's like, well, he showed up on the injury list this morning because, according to reports, flu symptoms or whatever. We're always apologizing for it. It just felt like a bad game for Mahomes, a bad day for the offense. Nobody could get open. Denver's defense was swarming on them. I was impressed with the Broncos. And frankly, I kept looking at the Chiefs saying something just felt off all day.
It really did. This Broncos team, you talk about things turning on a dime in the NFL. 3-4 weeks ago, we were talking about the Broncos defense like it might be the worst defense ever. This was, I believe, I saw this stat correctly, the second time in Patrick Mahomes' career he was held without a touchdown. Like they only scored 3 field goals in this game. And I love Patrick Mahomes. I do think he's one of the greatest players I've ever seen. It's okay to say he's not having a great season. Everybody wants to give him the MVP already. I've kind of been pushing back on that, and especially Chiefs fans, like, what are you talking about? He's this, he's that, running the ball, blah, blah, blah. He doesn't look like himself. He just has not looked great this season. The Chiefs offense has not looked great this season. It's a testament to how good they are that they keep winning games until today. But today, it just bit them into behind. Like you knew they were kind of overdue for a game like this because they kept playing with fire, not playing great, but getting by with wins. Today just kind of fell apart for them. I don't know where this Broncos defense came from. I guess if we were ripping Vance Joseph 3 weeks ago saying he should be fired, we should be praising him now for finding the answers. But 5 turnovers in this game for the Chiefs and the Broncos. This is the biggest win by far, obviously, of the very short Sean Payton era. Probably, I was saying, I'm out here in Colorado, biggest win for them since Super Bowl 50. It's been a while since Broncos fans could puff out their chest and say, hey, wow, that was a heck of a win. They haven't beat the Chiefs since 2015. Big win for the Broncos. Just weird for the Chiefs that they just, I don't know. I don't know what to make. They're another team. How many times I'm going to say this tonight, Fitz? I don't know what to make of blank. I don't know what to make of the Chiefs because I just keep expecting their offense to show up, right? It's Patrick Mahomes, Kelsey, Andy Reid. I don't know, man. There's just something that's not quite on track with the Chiefs.
So to your point, Mahomes, 15 passing touchdowns, 8 picks this year. And I think we got to start admitting that there are 2 different categories sometimes. I have no problem openly admitting over and over and over again, I think Patrick Mahomes is the best player in the NFL. I think he's the best quarterback in the NFL. That doesn't mean he's having an MVP season. And, Mitchell Schwartz, who played for the Chiefs, obviously, for a while and knows his team well, tweeted out after the game, as he was looking at some of it, tweeted out an important observation. He said, it's pretty obvious that everybody not named Kelsey is somebody right now that doesn't have a lot of trust from Mahomes. So Mahomes is holding on to the ball longer because he just doesn't trust that his guys are going to be in the right place at the right time. You could feel that in this game. He was holding on to the ball for a long time. The difference is Denver was getting home. Like they got good
I
can't make it make sense, but their pass rush, like apparently the method for Denver is like trade away all your good players and then you're going to play better. I don't know, but they were getting home. Mahomes was holding the ball, waiting to try and make something happen, and that's the magic of Mahomes. The magic of Mahomes is watching him find a way to do something we never thought could be done. Today, that was just biting him in the ass over and over and over again. And look, the sky's not falling, just like the sky isn't falling for most great teams. They're still 6-2, right? But man, I'll say this every week. Mahomes has never played a true playoff road game, right? So for the rest of the AFC, if you're the Bengals, boy, you got to be every time the Chiefs take a loss like this, you're like, this is important. If you're the Dolphins, if you're the Bills, everybody else trying to make that run for the number 1 spot in the AFC. I know we're barely halfway, but everybody's going to have their eye on that because you want to get Mahomes out of Arrowhead somehow.
Yeah, you didn't even name the team that's going to end up being the number 1 seed in the AFC, and that's a team with Trevor Lawrence at quarterback. We can talk about them in a second, but I think that, the schedule, it's just a schedule with them. But when it comes to the Chiefs, I'm just lost on them because I just keep expecting their offense to show up. We might be sitting here in December like, hey, the Chiefs offense is going to show up pretty soon. Maybe, I don't know if it does. Here's a question real quick for you. You're the Broncos. You're 3-5. You're coming off a win against the Chiefs. Trading deadline is this week. We've all talked about, hey, Jerry Jeudy's probably going to get traded. Maybe Simmons, Bowles, even Surtain. They're not trading Surtain, but whatever. Do you trade if you're the Broncos now, or do you say, hey, we're 3-5. Let's just see where this thing goes? I think you almost have to kind of see where it goes. I don't know, though. I think they're in a really, really tough spot now.
I think ego will drive all of this. And now you can look at it and say, look, the more we're getting rid of people and we're just getting people that buy into what I'm doing here, the better everything's going to be. And so I think this is one of those feather in your cap. See, we can coach with anybody. The coaches in front office will take it as a reason that, they know what they're doing, and they will still continue the absolute dismantling of it. And when they get to the offseason, even the fans will look at it and say, but look, in a rebuilding year, we still took down the Chiefs. We are better than people think. As we continue, I think this team's going to get gutted before Tuesday. The biggest question is, how deep does that go? By the way, Russ, who I've been saying is cooked, and I still believe that, 16 passing touchdowns, 4 picks this year. So.
It ain't bad, right? Like we saw Russ struggle on Thursday night, Arrowhead, and all that. But on the whole, it really has not been that bad for him. I don't want to say he's fixed, quote unquote, but heck of a lot better than it was last year.
Would he look good in the Vikings uniform? Okay, I'm not going to start this blatant speculation. Let's get to the rest of the games, obviously, happening throughout the course of the day. You just gave me your hot take, so I want to start with this one. Jacksonville beats Pittsburgh 20-10. Now, Kenny Pickett gets hit. What I thought was actually a blistering. I cannot believe there wasn't roughing called on it. I couldn't believe it wasn't a penalty. Pickett goes out. Trubisky comes in. Still no offense for Pittsburgh. Jacksonville gets a big 20-10 win. And Deontay Johnson was fired up afterwards, saying that the refs obviously wanted Pittsburgh to win this game. What say you, Frank Schwab?
Yeah, I think that's a loser's lament from Deontay. We looked at the stats before we started taping, and the Pittsburgh Steelers had 20 more penalty yards than Jacksonville. It's like, whatever. Like, they had the same amount of penalties, 6-6. There was a couple weird calls. I thought the hit on Pickett that hurt his ribs should have been a penalty. We've seen that be a penalty over and over. Kind of drove him into the ground after he threw the ball. I thought that should have been roughing the passer. It wasn't called. Steelers get a weird penalty, offensive offsides on a field goal, marching back 5 yards. They missed the retry right at the end of the first half. So, yeah, a couple of calls went against the Steelers. I don't think it was anything egregious. I just think this is a limited Steelers team. And I thought they were going to win today because I'm still a little bit wary of giving Jacksonville their credit, even though before the season, I said my surprise thing was Jacksonville's going to be number 1 seed in the AFC. It's all playing out right there for them. They're 6-2. Got some good road. There's a good road win.
They're 6-2. My God.
They're 6-2. And now that the Chiefs have come back to them a little bit, the one team that beat them head to head that they really need to worry about, the rest of the AFC South stinks. It does. I'm not on board with any of these teams. I think they can get hot against the division, the rest of their schedule, and I think they can compile the type of record to do what the Tennessee Titans did a few years ago, where we all knew they weren't the best team in the AFC, but they got the number 1 seed. I think Jacksonville is in position to kind of do that. I don't even think this team has played that well, but they're 6-2. I do think they're going to continue to improve as the season goes on.
Did you see, I'm pulling it up to make sure I read it right. Did you see Tony Khan's tweet about the Jags, part of the ownership, obviously, group, right. The Khan family?
I did not.
He said, thank you, Jags fans, and huge thanks to you for you fans here in Pittsburgh for the Jags win today. This is the important part to speak to what you said. He said, the 5th Jags win in a row in 4 different cities on 2 continents. Like, he's not wrong.
I know. They've dealt with a lot. Like, they've gone through kind of the gauntlet here and come out 4-0. It's impressive. Their mettle is very it is impressive. It's just this team could have whatever. We're in London again. We're traveling back here. We're going there. They've just kind of put their nose down. I think Travis Etienne has been a revelation this year. He was a good player last year, but I think he's gone to I'm in the all-pro conversation right now. I think Trevor Lawrence is kind of calmed down. He's playing well. I don't think they've even yet gotten the best out of Calvin Ridley. I think that there's another gear for him too. I just like where this Jags team is right now. I think they're going to get better. I think their schedule allows them to be in play for this number 1 seed in the AFC, which is crazy. I don't think they're their best team, but they're going to be in that conversation.
They're definitely going to win their division. But, I mean, when we talk about the conversation for top seed, I'm still all in on Baltimore. They beat Arizona 31-15. But here's what's funny. I just think this is the year where winning ugly counts for something. That's the only way I can say it. Because, Arizona makes it ugly every week. Like I kept looking at social media again during the game, and people say, well, this is why you can't trust Lamar. He's too inconsistent. And one week he looks great, and the next week he looks terrible. I can't tell you why the Ravens offense didn't look anywhere near as capable against a lesser team this week, but I can tell you that's been pretty consistent. Two things consistent this year. Great teams have had weird weeks, and the Cardinals have made teams week after week after week look ugly. So having an ugly win over the Cardinals, I don't think there's anything that takes away from that makes me feel less about the Ravens.
No, not at all. I mean, look, we've seen a million times in the NFL this year. You go on the road and win, whatever. Don't make excuses for it. Don't be looking for style points, because a lot of teams lose these games. Kansas City Chiefs today lost to what I presume is a bad Broncos team. It happens all the time in the Ravens. The Ravens are one of those teams that have lost a couple. They lost last minute against Pittsburgh. They lost at home to the Colts. They know what it's like to have an ugly loss. So, yeah, they didn't look great in this game, I didn't think. But I didn't also think it was all that competitive. I think the Ravens were like, we know we got this. We're fine. The Cardinals rallied at the end and made it interesting, but I don't think it was that close. And I do think when we're talking about what teams are in the circle of trust, what teams go to Super Bowl, the Ravens are absolutely up there. I think that the one thing they need, the one thing I want them desperately to go get that I've been talking about week after week, go get a running back. And Gus Edwards had a really good game today. I like Gus, but I like Gus as more of a second guy in the committee behind a Derrick Henry. Like that's my dream. Get Derrick Henry on the Ravens. I would love that, but I don't think the Titans are going to trade him. But we'll see what the Ravens do at the trade deadline. They're always a pretty aggressive team. And if they had the right pieces, this is the kind of nobody in the AFC should scare the Ravens, right? Like the Ravens should feel like we can win this thing. Why can't we?
Yeah, you mentioned the Titans. They can't trade Derrick Henry because they had probably the most, highlight-driven win of the season. Like, look, we had two teams that not a lot of people believe in the Falcons taking on the Titans in Nashville. The Titans get the 28-23 win. The two things that are significant here, Desmond Ridder did not finish the game. Now, it looked like at halftime he was benched. According to some reports, he may have been put into concussion protocol. Taylor Heineke comes in, so trying to figure out what that looks like. But more importantly, Will Levis makes his debut. The Mayo Man comes in, and all of a sudden, the Mayo Man does something the Titans fans haven't seen since Marcus Mariota throws 4 passing touchdowns in his first game. So it was an epic, huge, like DeAndre Hopkins had this awakening. The Titans were throwing the bombs everywhere. Are you in on the Mayo Man suddenly being this great, epic thing that we should all be paying attention to?
He's the same guy who couldn't beat out Malik Willis till now, right? But look, I mean, we all know he has this skill set. The one thing I loved about Will Levis today is he came in first start in the NFL. A lot of guys are timid. He was letting it rip, man. I mean, it was one of the most aggressive first game performances I've seen out of a quarterback. Will Levis is like, I got this cannon of an arm and I'm showing it off. They were going deep, 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 deep. And he hit a few to DeAndre Hopkins. The first one, by the way, is one of the most blatant offensive pass interferences I've ever seen. Like he literally turned, I think it was AJ Terrell, just literally spun him around like a top and caught a touchdown and no call. But whatever, that's the NFL. No call came. I thought Levis looked good. I need to confirm it. I'm not on the Levis train. I never was. But he looked athletic. He looked confident. The arm is always going to be there. I'd never question that. I think they owe it to themselves to just let Will Levis go. Even when Ryan Tannehill's ready to come back, I don't think you go back unless Will struggles next week or whatever. If it was right now, you got to make a decision. I'm letting Will Levis go and see where this thing. Yeah, we all know Tannehill's a free agent after the year. Let's see where this Will Levis thing goes.
Yeah, I agree that that's the right approach. I also think measured is the right way for everybody to be. There were a couple of things that stood out here. It felt like the Falcons were not at all anticipating that rip-it mentality, probably because the Titans haven't done a great job of that this year and because it's Will Levis's first start. And the other part of it is, for whatever reason, the Falcons just couldn't keep their eyes on Hopkins anywhere. Like, my guy was open the entire game. I'm going to have at least the core belief that most teams will attempt to, cover the best wide receiver on a team. I think that's going to happen more. So I was a little surprised that he was as wide open. Kudos to Will Levis for finding him. It was a great debut. I think maybe we all just calmed down a little bit on, I saw, again, social media right afterwards, the comment from so many Titans fans was like, see, now we have our quarterback, which means we can start to allocate our money this way in the future. And it's like, guys, it's one game against the Falcons. Like,
the Falcons, we've talked about this, man. The Falcons are the most mid team I've ever seen. They are just so painfully average. Like, we've talked about their schedule before, and it's like, well, you're one of these bad teams on everybody else's schedule. Like, nobody's scared of the Atlanta Falcons. They are going to somehow, I'm going to die on this hill. They'll somehow end up 8-1 by the end of the year, because that's what we deserve out of the Atlanta Falcons this year. They're the most average team I could think of.
Now, I do think their opponent next week, the Steelers suck. Like, they just live in a big old barrel of suck. But I do believe that the Steelers, as a defense, will look at everything they just saw and say, okay, how can we make things a little more complicated? That's let's see it for 3 or 4 weeks before we anoint Will Levis as, the golden god of the quarterbacks. But we don't always get that luxury, especially when it comes to young quarterbacks. We should acknowledge we did have the matchup everybody's been waiting for. And by everybody, I mean Houston and Carolina. The matchup of the two quarterbacks that were picked 1 and 2 last year in the draft, respectively. And everybody went nuts. Carolina gets their first win of the season, 15-13. Weirdest ending, y'all. Like, there was a kick, and then all of a sudden there was an offsides and another offsides, and like
they celebrated like 17 times, right? Like, yeah, we won. Like, no, you got to do it again. Like, what are we doing here?
But for the first time, I can say this all year. If I look at my, my favorite website, because my team always sucks. If I look at Tankathon right now, that tells me what the current draft standings would be in the NFL. The Carolina Panthers no longer would have the first overall pick that they'd be giving to Chicago. Okay. Arizona got it. Carolina now they rise to 1-6. I mean, it's just time for things to get weird. Carolina gets their first win, and they're celebrating for it.
Great time for Bryce Young to get his first win, because all the chatter, including myself, I've written this, like, hey, did they make the wrong pick? Like, CJ looks so good, like CJ Stroud. Bryce is so just a great time to Bryce to kind of get that monkey off his back a little bit, get the win, led the drive at the end. It wasn't a pretty drive. It wasn't Joe Montana against the Bengals in the Super Bowl or anything, but it was a game-winning drive that he put together. I thought, and he outplayed CJ Stroud today. Like, CJ Stroud's a heck of a player, and he's got a bright future. Bryce Young was better today. He was really in control. Kind of played the game we kind of expect out of Bryce Young. He's going to be this really kind of steady, good quarterback for the Panthers, I think, for a long time to come. Yes, they traded too much to go get him, but at the end of the day, I do think they have the right guy. I think maybe not the right guy. Maybe Stroud's going to be better, but I do think they have a dude. Like, I think Bryce Young's going to be just fine. And I think today was the first kind of step in proving that. And kind of, if people in Carolina were panicking at all, to say, okay, it might be okay with this Bryce Young kid. He's going to end up being a pretty good quarterback.
I still think that there's this level of the draft, and it's my least favorite thing about it. I would tell Panthers fans the same thing. Like, stop obsessing over what might have been. Like, if you ended up marrying your high school sweetheart and it was great, like, maybe stop looking at the pictures of the girl you didn't end up with. Like, at some point, it doesn't really matter, right? So I know that doesn't make for great sports talk when you're like, who cares? Like, but at some point, they made the decision they made. They traded up, they got their guy, and I don't think anything's going to change that for the next 3 or 4 years. So if you're going to spend the next 3 or 4 years on it, then like, let this thing slow cook. I think a little patience goes a long way. It's a big win for Carolina. It's an important moment because you got to start to win football games at some point if you're Bryce Young. So getting the win, I think, was significant. Also, Houston is anything that Houston's like Colorado in the college football world at this point. Like, whatever Colorado accomplishes is so far beyond the expectation. Good for them. That's where I am with Houston. Like, Houston's not a particularly great or deep football team. I'm not surprised they lost this game. It doesn't mean that the season's like all lost for them, but I didn't expect Houston to be a playoff team. So I just kind of watched Houston and thought, you know what? This is who I thought Houston would be, a team that is going to need some time and multiple drafts, multiple off seasons to build to where they want to be.
Totally. I totally agree with you. Like, I'm to the point where you don't know how it's going to look, I guess, watching it. But if you were to tell me at the end of the year that Houston went 5-12, I'd say, who cares? It's still a fine season for them. They got their dude at quarterback. Will Anderson's a pretty good player. They've added some pieces. Like, maybe CJ Stroud falls apart over the last 2 months. We don't know where that's going. But you're just telling me right now, wins and losses don't even matter for the Texans anymore. I know it was exciting. You feel like, wow, maybe this team can compete for a wild card spot or something. That's not where you're at. Be happy with where you're at, though. I think the Texans are on the right path, and yeah, today doesn't really throw that off for me. I think Stroud's going to be amazing. I'm so impressed with that kid, but today wasn't his day.
All right, let's move on to the next game on the slate. Miami beats New England 31-17. Not a lot really surprising here. The score, I think, is a little closer than the game felt like it was, which also is not a huge shock to this. Miami scored in big plays and big chunks. I don't know that I saw anything here that suddenly made me think, oh, there's my big hot take. But I will say it does set up, because you've been saying for a while the Dolphins can't be great until they beat somebody good. The Patriots are not good. The Patriots are not good at all.
They're not.
But it at least sets up like, hey, next week we get Dolphins, Chiefs in Germany. Like, there's a test for us.
I'm looking forward to that. And yeah, I mean, the Chiefs are vulnerable. You could go beat the Chiefs, and you should. We want to take the Miami Dolphins seriously as Super Bowl contender, go beat this Chiefs team that just lost to the Broncos. Then I'll take notice. Okay, maybe you are that team. Maybe you're going to be that team this year. The one thing I took out of this game, okay, Patrick Mahomes struggles. I really don't see him being an MVP this right now. He could be. He could go on a tear. Like we see Patrick Mahomes play that way. Tua probably is the MVP right now. But I'm kind of going to start to beat the drum on Tyreek Hill being the MVP of the league. I don't think anybody's having a bigger impact. And I know there's a quarterback award, and I know no non-quarterbacks can win it anymore. It's basically against the rules, and we'll give you Offensive Player of the Year. No. Tyreek Hill reached 1,000 yards in first 8 games of the season. The first guy to do that in a Super Bowl era, okay? Every week, who makes the game-changing play for the Miami Dolphins? It's Tyreek Hill. There's nobody this season who I've seen have more of an impact week after week than Tyreek Hill. Every week he makes a big play. Even today, look, the Patriots came out, they scored right away. And you're like, whoa, okay, we see weird things happen in the NFL every week. I was like, our Dolphins, my survivor pool pick, by the way, this week. I was like, am I going to lose this one here? It's 7-zip. And then right away, 42-yard touchdown, Tyreek Hill just gets behind the defense, makes a nice adjustment on the ball in the end zone. And Miami's off to the races after that. Now, they probably beat the Patriots anyway because there's a better team, but that play was, nope, not today, Patriots. You got your touchdown. Great for you. We're not losing this game to you. Tyreek Hill kind of flipped the momentum of that game, and he does that every single week with big plays. And I'm going to tell you, this isn't the last time we're going to be sitting here on Sunday night, and I'm going to say, I think Tyreek Hill may be the MVP of the league. He's not going to win. I know he's not going to win because he can't, because no voters are going to vote for him. But Tyreek Hill, to me, if I had to vote right now, I'd vote for Tyreek Hill.
I think it's interesting, too. A couple of former players I talked to last season, were sitting down, cutting up tape, and they were looking at teams and the way you defend Tyreek Hill. And their whole point was that you can look at the backside of a defense and see that the entire backside is shifting to where they think Tyreek is going to end up, because you have to anticipate his speed so much. And what that does is that creates a ton of room either on the opposite side of the field or underneath. And it's the basic principle is that's a big part of how the Chiefs built their offense to allow Kelsey to thrive the way he does. What's interesting to me is that they're still shifting on the back end of the defense in such a drastic way. He's still getting so wide open, but that is creating such a mismatch for Waddle or whoever else is this week going off. Like, it's really been interesting to see that, because everybody has to account. Like, we're not just talking about the 1,000 yards. We're also talking about the fact that it changes what your running lanes look like, because
I was going to say, there's a reason this team is averaging 6 whatever yards per carry. And it's not just because Raheem Mostert became a superstar. Raheem Mostert's a really nice player when he's healthy, but it's because every team is like, oh my God, where's Tyreek? we gotta play too deep. We gotta adjust to him wherever he's at. And you're right. They never see a loaded box. They're not gonna see a loaded box all season as long as Tyreek Hill is healthy.
Yeah, it's incredible to see what they've been able to do there. Also, big game for the Cowboys while we're going through this. Cowboys get a 43-20 win. They were up 33-3 at one point over the Rams in this. The Rams never really felt like they were in this game. Also, Dallas, a bunch of great plays in this on the special teams side. Like, the Cowboys, I felt like the Cowboys honestly were coming out making a bit of a statement of, hey, y'all want to talk about the Eagles every single day? Like, we're here too, and fairly so. Like, they are here.
Yeah, I thought this was a game that the Cowboys were going to look ahead, because next week is Cowboys at Eagles, which is an awesome game, by the way. That's going to be really, really fun. And I thought, it's human nature. We got the Eagles next week. We're going to beat the Rams, whatever. I thought they're going to struggle a little bit. Just blew the doors off the Rams right away. And this was easily the best game of the season for that offense. I believe Dak ended up with 304 yards, 4 touchdowns. CeeDee Lamb goes off in this game. I mean, he was just great. We've been waiting for the Cowboys offense to catch up to his defense. Defense has been fantastic most of the year, except against San Francisco. Special teams have been solid. Like, they made some big plays today. It's been the offense that's kind of dragging the Cowboys down, and all the questions about Mike McCarthy and his play calling and all this. Well, this Cowboys offense is going to show up like this the rest of the year. And like we've talked about here on Sunday nights before, the way the NFL is set up now is the first month and a half, you're just kind of feeling out who you are. Like, what are we going to be? We're adjusting, whatever. It's almost like a second preseason for them. And now, though, if this is a Cowboys offense, we're going to see the rest of the year. Yeah, it changes. I sat here after they lost to the Niners and said, nah, this ain't a Super Bowl contender. Well, if the offense plays like this and they go into Philly next week and they put up 35 points on that defense, sure, I could be, my mind could be changed.
Part of the way everything's set up too that I think is helping particular teams like the Cowboys thrive is the way the game is being called and being thrown for wide receivers. Like CeeDee Lamb was uncoverable today. But you're at a spot now where if you underthrow him, you're going to get a pass interference. If you overthrow him, somebody's going to make a defensive hold. Like if you could just, as a quarterback, if you could just get the ball in the vicinity, I think you said this in Vegas when we were talking, like the refs will love to bail you out on a third and long over and over again. And we see it like the number of times CeeDee Lamb just went up, and it easily transitions us to the other huge win that we saw today for a wide receiver, because A.J. Brown was also like A.J. Brown and CeeDee Lamb showed us today that when you have that guy as a wide receiver, the Eagles get a big 38-31 win. But A.J. Brown was absolutely uncoverable in this. And even when they thought they had him covered, because everybody's so cautious in trying not to interfere or hold or do all these things, you just watch A.J. Brown reach over people and just, boop, I got the ball. Like it's a marvel to watch. I love every second of it. I don't know what I would do if I was a defensive player. I don't know how you stop any of this.
I don't either. And by the way, I know that when I was gushing about Tyreek Hill and MVP, there were some Eagles fans saying, he ain't even the best receiver in football right now. Have you seen our guy? Have you seen number 11? Because he's got, I believe, six straight. He's awesome.
Right now.
He's got 6 straight 125-yard games, I believe. NFL record he set today. He's been great, and he turned this game around. I mean, the Eagles were the team that's looking ahead, I thought. Like, they went in, I thought, like, okay, you messed around with the Commanders once, you barely beat them. You're not going to do that again. And they did. Like, the Commanders had every reason to win this game. The Eagles fumbled twice inside the 10-yard line, and their defense was kind of shredded by Sam Howell at times. I mean, they put up a whole lot of yards in this game, but A.J. Brown just wouldn't let them lose. Like, he's that dude right now. And it seems like so long ago, but when he was on the sideline kind of complaining about not getting the ball or whatever that dust-up was, it wasn't a big deal, but it was a thing everybody saw. Since then, I mean, the Eagles are like, how often you want the ball, AJ? Because we'll give it to you as much as you want. He took over this game today. He was absolutely the difference in them not getting upset by the Commanders.
I think what's interesting is when your team is really bad, it's rarely one person or play that loses you a game. It's all the way across the board. We got holes here. When you've got a really good football team, what becomes interesting to me over the course of the season, it's never one person that continually wins you a game. It's a different group or position group or different player that seems to step up every week. That's kind of where I am with the Eagles. Like, there's a lot of doubt from a lot of people because it hasn't looked as easy as it did last year, but it just feels like every single week they're finding a new way to just say, nope, oh, you can't stop this. Well, you can't stop this. 1 week it's I can't stop the interior of their defensive line. The next week it's I can't do anything about A.J. Brown. Like, I got to give them credit because it just feels like a different person or group every week says, nope, we're going to pull it up by the bootstraps. I will be the reason that we win this football game.
Yeah, they're just so deep. They're the epitome of how many different ways we can win a football game. Like, they could beat you in so many different ways. You're right. Some weeks it's, hey, the offensive line is just going to take over. We're going to run for 250 yards. Like, they have that capability. I know it's early in the week. I won't hold you this. Cowboys or Eagles next week? What do you got?
Eagles. I got the Eagles.
Think so?
Yes.
I don't know, man. If Dak's getting hot at the right time, it's such a good game. And I think that is one of those games, even though it's pretty early and it'll be first week of November, that is one of those crossroads games of which of these teams is going into the circle of trust. Because if the Eagles come out and blow out the Cowboys, like, okay, now that they're 7-2 or whatever their record is would be at that point. Like, we've kind of been nitpicking them. They're really good. Or it's going to be the Cowboys just went on the road and beat Philly. Their offense is getting going. Maybe that loss to the Niners threw us all off. It was just a bad day for them. I don't know. It's going to be a fascinating game. I think if I had to pick, I'd pick the Eagles, but not by much. I don't. It almost seems like a coin flip to me.
If Dak and that offense can stay in sync against the interior of that Philly defensive line, then I have a much different belief. Like, if we're sitting here next week and they handled that, then it's like, okay, then look, fine. Like, put them in a different conversation.
The narrative's changing. The narrative is changing next Sunday afternoon, one way or another for these two teams.
God, you're so right. Like, every show next week is going to be all Cowboys all week, no matter what happens for that outcome. A game nobody's going to talk about this week, but we will on this show because we talk about them all. The Saints beat the Colts 38-27. Look, it was a plucky effort by Derek Carr. I think they needed every ounce of the offense he was able to provide him. He had some really nice throws in this game. Taysom Hill continued to remind us that there are just weeks that he can take over and he becomes really hard to defend. I think if you're a Saints fan, there was a lot of good out of this. If you're a Colts fan, it's the story of this season. Like, there have been times that they look really good, but they're going to have to figure out how to stop people at some point. Like, they still put up 27. Like, they've got to figure out not the quarterback stuff right now. They got to figure out a way to slow down other teams. Yeah,
they need some cornerbacks. I mean, they just don't have anything on the outside, and the Saints had their way. Like, if you like, this is what's so frustrating about the Saints. I think the Falcons are my most frustrating team this year. The Saints aren't far behind because I look at that roster and that depth chart and I'm like, Rashid Shaheed's a really, really good player. Really good. Like, he's probably underutilized by them. We all know Olave's a stud. Michael Thomas is back. He's healthy. Kamara, that offensive line, and some of the guys on defense. And yet it doesn't always show up every week. This week it did. They had, I think, more than 500 yards, 511, I believe. And this is the team I kind of expect out of the Saints. Put up 38 points once in a while, 39, whatever it was. They have this talent. They should be doing this every week, and they don't. And that's what's frustrating. But today I thought they looked really good. And they have an easy schedule too. I keep talking about the Falcons schedule. Not like the Saints schedule is hard. Like, they have a lot of winnable games. I think one of these two teams is going to emerge in the second half of the season just because they have all these easy opponents. Maybe it's the Saints because, I mean, at some point, all this talent has to pay off for them.
Yeah, I actually agree. I think the Saints are not going to be in the same tier as the upper echelon of the NFC for me at all, but I still think that they have a real shot at winning this division. When you talk about prove-it games, though, I will say I'm just sort of at the spot, like, what are our questions? Why are we still asking questions constantly about the Seahawks? Like, it feels like 3 or 4 years ago, maybe it was a quarterback. Maybe it's just as simple as quarterback brand bias. When Russ was the quarterback, everybody was like, oh, yeah, man, this team can beat anybody anytime. Like, the Seahawks are in first place, as we just mentioned. They have 2 losses this year. One was the opening week of the season. They got thumped by the Rams. All right, opening week of the season, stuff happens. The other loss was in Cincinnati in a close game.
And they outplayed the Bengals in that game. They completely outplayed the Bengals.
They get the 24-20 win over the Browns. Browns still have no idea what they're doing offensively. But I thought Seattle came in and they showed, hey, against one of the better defenses, no, we're good. Like, the fact that they were still able to move the football against that defense and be efficient against that defense, I looked at it and I was like, why are more people not jumping on the Seahawks bandwagon right now?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they're a team, like I said, they all played the Bengals. I know people don't like playing that game of like, well, you lost, who cares? No, they all played the Bengals. They didn't get it done, whatever it happens. They have a win at Detroit that's aging really, really well. Like, Detroit, we think is a pretty good team. We'll see on Monday night, I guess. But you're right. The Seahawks are a good football team. But I think a big factor for them is Jackson Smith-Njigba. Their first-round pick, first receiver off the board. He really was kind of a nobody for the first 5-6 weeks of the season. Last couple weeks, he's really come on. He's given them another option, scored a game-winning touchdown today. Tyler Lockett had a good game. We know Metcalf is a stud. We know Kenneth Walker's really good out of the backfield. Zach Charbonnet hit some big plays today. All of a sudden, you're seeing all these ingredients coming together and they're cooking it up. And once this offense gets really, really going, I think Geno's going to get hot like he did last year, just because he has so many dudes to work with. Noah Fant made a big play in this game, late in the game. So there's just a lot to work with here for the Seahawks. And I'm with you. I picked the Seahawks to win the NFC West before the season. I was kind of being a contrarian. I feel pretty good about it now because they're two teams going in opposite directions, man. Nobody wants to say it, but the Seahawks, if they can handle the 49ers when they had their head-to-head matchups, which they couldn't do last year, but if they can beat the 49ers at least once, Seahawks might win this division, man.
Yeah, and look, I know, Geno still had his 2 interceptions, but I will say that one of those interceptions, like Mo Hurst being able to
that was crazy. What a play that was.
Sometimes that's just going to happen. Like, sometimes things are not going to break your way. And I'm not going to sit here and say it was the most effective game for Geno. But what really blew my mind watching it was that it wasn't the cleanest game for Geno, and they still played as well as they played, right? Like, Kenneth Walker and Charbonnet, between the two of them, they ran the ball incredibly efficiently. It looks like the average was 6.7 yards a carry.
Unbelievable.
And I don't even know if that does justice. Like, and And they did that. It felt like their offensive line was resetting the line of scrimmage over and over and over again. And I love where we are to target share at this point. Like Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf are getting such a good share of the targets that I don't feel like any one person has become the only focal point to this. So that allows opportunity for inject. But I feel like the expectations and the way we talked about the Seahawks have been so low for so long. But realistically, I think we're wrong. The Seahawks look clearly like a playoff team right now. And right now, I don't see why they can't be a front runner in the West moving forward. In part because they're playing better than I thought they would. And in part because, frankly, the 49ers just haven't looked good for the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, if you're like, I always kept saying the Ravens are my sleeper contender. Well, the Ravens aren't sleepers anymore. Everybody knows about them. Now it's the Seahawks. Why can't they make a run in the playoffs? They're going to make the playoffs. Look at the NFC. Like, the NFC is not strong enough that the Seahawks are going to get knocked out of the playoffs unless they just take on a million injuries. And why can't they make a run when they're in there? They're going to get to the point where, especially with these rookies, Charbonnet and Jackson Smith and Jigba coming on, that their offense is going to be scary by January. Their defense is much, much better. Witherspoon's been a great player for them. I really like the Seahawks. I'm totally with you. I think the Seahawks team is the one nobody's talking about, who's probably the best team nobody's talking about.
When we watch this whole thing go down, especially when we get to the playoffs, I trust teams that can run the football with coaches that I trust, with offensive and defensive lines that can play. I'm sorry, I'm describing the Seahawks there at this point. Like, and that's pretty simple. I almost forgot the Sunday night game. We go through every game, and I almost left out the.
You didn't miss much, yeah.
The glorious beatdown. What I saw tonight in Sunday Night Football was what I thought I'd see last week when my beloved Raiders took on the Bears. Instead, the Bears turned around and kicked my ass. But the Chargers came in and just handled things easily, and this is just. It's just what I expected. I mean, the Chargers are a better team top to bottom. And the Chargers, even not as healthy as they can be, are still in a better situation than the Bears are. And this was that Bagent moment where he came down to earth a little bit. Like, some of those throws were a little bit off, a little bit long, a little bit short. The things that we expected. Kudos to the Chargers for mixing it up and getting in their faces. The Chargers wanted nothing to do with letting the Bears go on the run. Like, I thought it was a great game by the Chargers and exactly what I expected from the Bears.
Yeah, this is like the first easy Chargers win ever. Like, maybe like a recorded history of the Chargers ever had an easy win, but it was no contest. I mean, Austin Eckler looked healthy again. Maybe the Chargers get on a run. I don't really trust them at all, but they're just better than the Bears. The Bears have a long, long way to go. I mean, the play where Velus Jones falls down in the end zone and the ball bounces off his chest, basically, that just sums up where the Bears are. They're just not there yet. The couple wins they've had have been fun, and the fans got all excited about Bagent and all this kind of stuff. They're so far away, and that's okay. That we knew this was going to take a while, but I think Sunday night was a wake up call if anybody thought the Bears were kind of coming on strong or anything. They're still a long, long way to go there.
Before we get out of here, do you want my bold Monday Night Football prediction?
Oh, my goodness. I'm scared. I'm a little scared to even ask. But yes, Fitz, what is your bold Monday Night Football prediction here?
After reports this morning that the players and the team, my beloved Raiders, sat down and had heart-to-heart meetings to go over all of the things that were happening, I think a focused, angry Lions team that got their asses kicked last week are going to come in and beat this Raiders team, my beloved Raiders team, in one of the worst regular season losses I've seen in the last decade. I think it is going to be one of the biggest thumpings I've had to sit through from top to bottom. And when it's all said and done, a Mark Davis that is now paying attention to the Raiders instead of the Vegas Aces winning a championship is going to sit in that stadium and think, you know what? Not sure I got the guy. I think I think tomorrow night is the night where the cracks in the armor finally actually start to implode, and it becomes the beginning of the end of Josh McDaniels with the Raiders.
Wow. I would say the beginning of that had happened a while ago, but whatever. That's fine. I get what you're saying. I also know what you're doing. You're bracing yourself. You're doing, I'm preparing myself to be let down here.
The last time this year I said, man, we're going to get our asses kicked was the Buffalo game. And what do you know?
Yeah, you sure did. Yeah. No, I agree. I think the Lions are just, you're right. It would have been so much better off for the Raiders had the Lions gone in and beat Baltimore last week, because now they're like, we're embarrassed, 38-6. They're a good football team. The Lions are not a bad football team. They just got their behinds kicked by the really good Ravens team. So, yeah, I think you're in trouble. I think you're in a lot of trouble. By the way, what you saw that we don't talk a lot of NBA. Chicago Bulls had a team meeting after the first game.
Yeah.
If you're having a team meeting, a closed-door team meeting opening night, you know your season is screwed. You are done. Like,
the fact that like they openly, like they openly admitted, you got to figure out if coach needed to intervene in this. So like game one of the marathon of the NBA season.
Like, oh my God.
Chicago, you're like, just raise a glass, Bulls fans.
Blackhawks might be good. I don't know, because it ain't going to be the Bulls if you're having a team meeting after game one. So yes, the team meeting aspect with the Raiders, there's a lot of bad. It's kind of one of those, we're a bad team and a lot of stories get leaked out already. And that's kind of the Josh McDaniels thing too, about everybody's a little upset. And yeah, I've talked on this podcast with Charles before and with you now. I just don't, and Shalise Manza Young, our colleague, wrote about it. Like, Josh is probably just a really good coordinator, is not a head coach. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, Wade Phillips had a great football career, right? I just think that's Josh McDaniels.
Which is why I drink. All right, Charles McDonald will be back Tuesday with the exempt list. I'm back Wednesday with Charles Robinson and Jory Epstein for Inside Coverage. You can leave us a voicemail, by the way. This is fun technology. Speakpipe.com. Speakpipe, like speak, and then like pipe, like, he hit Frank with a pipe. Speakpipe.com/0blitz. You can see I'm angry. Speakpipe.com/0blitz. That's how you leave us a voicemail. We'll play the good ones if they're family friendly on the shows. I'm at Jason Fitz on Twitter. Of course, Frank is at Yahoo Schwab, and Stone, our producer extraordinaire doing God's work behind the glass, at SJ Rochelle. That's how you get to Stone. Leave us a 5-star review, rate, subscribe, tell your friends, your family, or enemies. Tell everybody to hang out with us every single week. In the meantime, thanks for hanging out with us today. We will see you next Sunday.